In this week's reading, there's a very important lesson I think every member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints needs to learn and internalize. In this episode, we're going to talk about that lesson. I'm Art, and this is So What? In Doctrine and Covenants, section 52, verse 37, we're introduced to a new person that I want to kind of focus on. It says, "In consequence of transgression, let that which was bestowed upon Heman Bassett be taken from him and placed upon the head of Simonds Ryder." For whatever reason, due to worthiness, Heman Bassett could no longer serve his mission and was being replaced by Simonds Ryder, an extremely new convert to the church. We're talking by weeks, maybe even days. See, when Simonds first met the prophet Joseph Smith, he witnessed what he perceived to be a miracle, and that solidified his testimony, and so he chose to be baptized in June of 1831. Section 52 was received on June 6th of 1831, calling him to serve on a mission. You see, shortly after the revelation in Section 52 was received, Simonds got 2 letters from the prophet regarding his call. In both letters, the prophet Joseph Smith misspelled his name. Instead of Ryder, R-Y-D-E-R, he spelled it Ryder, R-I-D-E-R. This unfortunately offended Simonds Ryder. In History of the Church, it says that he thought if the spirit through which he had been called to preach could err in the matter of spelling his name, it might have erred in calling him to the ministry as well. Or in other words, he was led to doubt if he were called at all by the Spirit of God, because of the scribal error in the spelling of his name. So days after getting baptized and receiving a mission call, Simonds leaves the church. And unfortunately, he doesn't just leave it at that. He allows this animosity towards the prophet Joseph Smith to grow, and he becomes determined to ruin Joseph's name. His attacks would eventually lead to a mob being incited that would tar and feather Joseph Smith and leave him on the brink of death. Now you're probably wondering, so what? So Simonds Ryder didn't like Joseph Smith. What does that have to do with me? Well, this all started because the prophet made a mistake. And it's important to remember that church leaders are imperfect humans who make mistakes every day, just like you and me. Let me give you an example. In 1961, Joseph Fielding Smith, then an apostle, stated that man would never land on the moon. 8 years later, on July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong stepped out of the Apollo 11 lunar module and became the first person to walk on the moon. Now, when he was asked about his comment at a press conference in 1971, Joseph Fielding Smith, now as the prophet of the church, said, "Well, I was wrong, wasn't I?" Even the prophet makes mistakes, but don't miss the forest for the trees. The prophet's humanity doesn't diminish their divine call. It doesn't diminish the fact that the Lord speaks through them at times. Elder Jeffrey R. Holland taught the following:
Be kind regarding human frailty, your own as well as those who serve with you in a church led by volunteer mortal men and women. Except in the case of his only perfect begotten Son, imperfect people are all God has ever had to work with. That must be terribly frustrating to him, but he deals with it. So should we. And when you see imperfection, remember that the limitation is not in the divinity of the work. As one gifted writer has suggested, when the infinite fullness is poured forth, it's not the oil's fault if there's some loss, because finite vessels can't quite contain it all. Those finite vessels include you and me. So be patient and kind and forgiving.
Tiny heart. Check you next time.